To what extent is it ethically justifiable to prevent monogenetic hereditary diseases by intervening in the germline using CRISPR? Wait. I know what you're all thinking. I'm not no professor. I'm not no biologist. The germline, CRISPR, monogenetic, that's too much. No worries, I got you. I will explain to you what CRISPR is, what the germline is, and why there is an ethical debate around intervening in the germline. Of course, at the end of this video, you will also know what all this has to do with the SDGs. Anyways, let's start in slow. This whole topic is built around gene editing. A gene is just a certain part of this right here, our DNA. The DNA is the basic module to our life. When you build a Lego set, you need an instruction to do this, right? Our DNA is basically that instruction for us, so it determines the structure of our bodies. Scientists have been doing research around editing the DNA for a long time, and the most recent and advanced technology for that purpose has been CRISPR. This is no biology video, so we won't get into detail, but you can picture CRISPR as kind of a gene scissors, because it can cut certain areas of the DNA. This means by using CRISPR you can modify, switch off, or repair DNA. There are a lot of different kinds of intervention using CRISPR. However, the most discussed one yet is the intervention in the germline. The germline is simply the cell sequence from an ovum, like this one right here, to the final germ cells of this cute little fella. Therefore, you're intervening in the creation of the germ cells of this baby. What this means is that you are basically creating a living human with edited DNA. Currently, interventions in the germlines are banned by law. But why? You can delete hereditary traits for severe diseases and prevent a bunch of suffering. Yeah, right. But all the babies this little fella is going to beget will have his edited DNA. Oh, perfect, you might think. No hereditary diseases anymore. The problem is that gene editing isn't developed fully enough yet. Often DNA segments have multiple functions, and if you delete the gene which gives you, for example, Huntington disease, without knowing that it also regulates other important processes of your body, this would be a generational threat. Concluding, this would mean that we could judge the justifiability of this intervention by a normal chance-risk balance, just like any other medical intervention. For instance, if the chance that an operation is successful lies around 100%, you would do it. So let's hypothetically assume that this is the chance-risk balance for an intervention in the germline. Green for successful, red for not. If it looked like this, you would, just from a technical standpoint, approve the intervention, right? I'm sorry, but I have to disappoint you again due to the complexity of this decision, because interventions in the germline cannot be just from just a technical standpoint, due to the fact that ethical values, just like human dignity, or as well equity, or, for example, also freedom, are involved, and these cannot be assessed by simple percent numbers. Okay, so far so good. Now let's take a look at the most important part, because when you have to judge this intervention from an ethical standpoint, you will need orientation and criteria to do that, right? Of course, here you go. But those are all some big words without context. That's why I'm here. Every human being has human dignity, regardless of his circumstances. The construct of human dignity prohibits a complete instrumentalization of a human, which essentially means that you can't use a human for your own sake without his consent. In regard with the germline intervention, you have to ask yourself the question, to what extent is that human used as an experiment in terms of scientific research or a forced creation of a child due to an unrealistic child wish of two parents? Moreover, you have to think about if the circumstances of his creation affect the legal status of the created human. If so, the consequences reach over the individual and the debate develops around generational dignity. Generational dignity. On the other side, the fact, generational dignity. On the other side, the fact has to be considered that a renunciation of an intervention with the chance of preventing a lot of suffering due to a hereditary disease could also violate the construct of human dignity. Just as human dignity, every human, regardless of his circumstances, has the right for life and integrity. In terms of scientific research and experiments, it is a big question at which point of development of the human does this right apply. Anyways, in terms of our focus with hereditary diseases, in this context, the compulsion to intervene to ensure a healthy life and integrity is just as big of a point as within human dignity. The following ethical criteria is naturality. Is the germline a heritage of humankind and is considered untouchable because it sets boundaries for human creation? From a religious standpoint, this is also extremely important because the natural creation of humans by God's hand is holy to most religions. Moreover, the consequences of an intervention like this are uncontrollable because the evolution of humans over millions of years is way too complex to just intervene and predict the results. However, evolving against from nature set specified conditions was always a big part of human development. Freedom is described as the condition to have a self-determined orientation in your lifestyle. To what degree, speaking out of the perspective of a person with an edited DNA, is this intervention, which severely affects my life and the life of my children, violating my personal freedom? Because I couldn't decide if I want to have this intervention or not. Missing regulations, on the other hand, in terms of boundaries around germline interventions, are extremely dangerous too, because it is a generational threat. This absence of regulations can be described as negative freedom. In terms of damage prevention, the earlier mentioned chance-risk balance plays a big role to just calculate the chance of an unsuccessful or successful intervention. Furthermore, you are also taking a specific look at the potential damage caused by a hereditary disease which could be prevented. With the next criteria, equity, you take a look at to what extent is it politically fair for the affected person to not be involved in the decision process of the intervention. In relation to social justice, you have to consider there are still people suffering from that disease, people that were denied the intervention by their deciding parents or people that didn't have the opportunity to have an intervention like this, which could lead to inequality-based conflicts. The aspect of solidarity is close connected to the point of equity, because due to earlier mentioned inequalities in regard with germline interventions, there could evolve major conflicts between different social groups of the society because of the possible question of affordability, which could eventually lead to a cohesion of society or just an unfair allocations of resources in terms of medical services around germline interventions. And at last, who takes responsibility for a germline intervention due to the fact that the affected person can't, and if parents were allowed to just take responsibility for changing the DNA of their child, this would completely disrupt the understanding of parenthood, and furthermore, who can possibly take responsibility for whole future generations with making the decision of an intervention? Now that we have the ethical tools on how to judge a germline intervention, let's try it on an actual example. Mr. and Mrs. James right here want to have a child. The problem is, Mr. James has a monogenetic disease called Huntington, which has severe consequences. Mrs. James has exactly the same disease, which means that there is no way around it. The baby is going to have it too. The only solution is gene editing using CRISPR. One good thing is that even with the current technological standpoint, the intervention would be very safe due to the fact that the disease is monogenetic, which means that basically only one gene is mutated. So now we jump a few years in the future ahead where we can make the assumption that the intervention would be completely safe and we just judge it from an ethical perspective. Let's start in. The person would not be instrumentalized because the intervention would just pursue the purpose of ensuring a life with human dignity or just less suffering. A legally devalued status could be prevented by simple laws. In terms of integrity protection, the baby has the right of defense against diseases, which means that he would even have a claim for the intervention. Aspects of naturality do not apply because no healthy mind would consider a disease like Huntington as a natural asset worth preserving. The parents have the right of reproductive freedom, which gives them the fundamental right to try everything possible to reproduce, and the intervention would even eliminate certain freedom deficits for the baby that would come up due to the development of the disease. On the other hand, the person would be forced to constant medical investigation throughout his life to check on the safety of the germline intervention. In terms of damage prevention, it wouldn't really apply, because it would exceed the medical act of a doctor with the purpose of damage prevention, due to the fact that there is no actual person yet, and from a doctor's perspective, this act would count as an unrealistic child wish of two parents. Moreover, there are modern medical methods to weaken the course of such diseases, and out of the perspective of the doctor, the severeness of the disease is not determined yet. Furthermore, the intervention could interfere the recognition as an equal person, because there will be naturally created people and people created and designed through germline interventions. On the other hand, the intervention could prevent physical disadvantages, which could have a positive effect on equality in the society. And big question, is the intervention financed by the health insurance? Because if not, the gap between rich and poor is going to explode. In the same manner, it would affect the criteria of solidarity. If you get the intervention, you have way less costs due to medical treatment through your life. Furthermore, it could reduce the solidarity of people who already have the disease because they feel disadvantaged. Also, because due to the simplicity of the prevention of the disease, it would put already diseased people in kind of an irrelevant light, and parents who didn't decide to get the intervention would probably be discriminated. This would probably conclude in a responsibility based on social pressure for the parents to do the intervention for the purpose to prevent their child from suffering. In conclusion, I decide that there are no big enough reasons to prohibit this intervention, also due to the fact that negative effects can be minimized through laws that guarantee, for example, equal access options or lifelong medical treatments for those who didn't get an intervention. Therefore, an intervention in the germline using CRISPR to prevent a monogenetic disease is ethically justifiable. You might catch yourself wondering now, okay, good conclusion, but what the hell does this have to do with the SDGs? Don't worry, I got you. Let's get the obvious one out of the way. When, in the right way used, gene editing can enormously improve the health of future generations through just eliminating hereditary diseases, genes that cause HIV or other disabilities. Moreover, gene editing can also provide less inequalities due to more equal physical conditions, which is also deeply connected with just equality and justice in the society. A big point that will be very important in the future, and that I mentioned earlier as well, is the disruptions of our general understanding of parenthood and regarded responsibilities. Because, as we all know, our parents just want the best for us. However, where do you draw the line as a parent between disease and normal? What if I ask myself, okay, I'm not that tall, I can't build muscle fast, I'm not very smart, but my son should be. It would be the best for him, right? Why don't I just try a little editing? My son doesn't have to be normal like me. He could also be like him, or like him, or like him. A pretty strange idea, right? But a very real ethical debate that has to happen all around the globe immediately. I hope I didn't leave too many question marks in your head. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and a comment. And if you want to learn more about this topic, just look into the sources I put in the description. Bye bye.